At this very moment, a military invasion. Hungary is preparing to seize Zakarpattia. A sensation has shaken the information space. Budapest is already at the starting line. Is Orbán really planning to follow the Kremlin's path and annex part of our country under the pretext of protecting compatriots? Fake news, provocation, or a worrying sign? We'll tell you all about it right now.
Following Putin's example, Hungary is preparing its own special military operation against Ukraine. A post appeared online with the text, Operation Turul. Coming soon, the return of Zakarpattia to the motherland. The post was accompanied by a video report allegedly showing columns of Hungarian armored vehicles heading toward the Ukrainian border. The spokesperson for the State Border Guard Service, Andriy Demchenko, assured that Hungary is not moving equipment to the border with Ukraine. This is all fake. The Center for Countering Disinformation under the National Security and Defense Council confirmed that the entire story is fake. Grok, the artificial intelligence integrated into the social network, noted that this is a speculative scenario designed to stir up nationalist sentiment in Hungary, but not an actual plan for a military operation. The disinformation about the Hungarian Operation Turul was first spread by an anonymous account called Hungary Based. As it turned out, it has absolutely no connection to Hungarian media or government bodies. This account often promotes the idea of returning Zakarpattia to Hungary.
And obviously it is quite provocative in nature. And from this perspective, we can say that it very much resembles the hand of Moscow.
The post on the X network gained over 1 million views and fueled yet another round of propaganda about European troops seizing Western Ukraine.
Only Russians could talk about an attempted special military operation by Hungary.
Hungary would never be allowed to invade Ukraine militarily, since almost all of its defense capability is provided by NATO and its allies. And the country itself is a member of the European Union. Besides that, Ukraine clearly has a military advantage.
Such an action would immediately provoke a very sharp reaction from the European Union. And third, when we talk about the armed forces of Ukraine, which currently number, well, of course, no one knows the exact figure, but the information was somewhere around 700,000 people. And the Hungarian armed forces, just for the record, are 19,000 people plus 12,000 reservists. Obviously, these forces are simply incomparable.
As it turned out, the footage with the military equipment was not preparation for an invasion, but part of the annual Ludovica festival, featuring a display of military hardware.
The Hungarian Ministry of Defense has already explained that the video circulating online showing armored vehicles in Budapest is connected to the Ludovica festival, an annual public event. Other materials from the fake correspondence are archival footage from exercises that took place in November 2023.
Such disinformation campaigns benefit Russia. Their goal is to create a tense situation between Ukraine and in neighboring countries. Previously, Russia spread a similar fake about the mining of the border with Hungary, Moldova, or EU countries.
All of this is aimed at truly destabilizing the relationship between the two countries, which is already far from cloudless. You know, there are also quite a few examples where the Russians acted in the same way. For example, when there were rather complicated relations with Poland, there was a grenade launcher attack on the Polish consulate in Lviv.
Fake information about the movement of military equipment to the border appeared the day after. The Security Service of Ukraine, on May 9th, for the first time in history, exposed an agent network of Hungarian military intelligence that was spying against Ukraine. According to the investigation, they were gathering data on the deployment of Ukrainian armed forces in Zakarpattia.
I can believe that such a network might exist, especially considering Hungary's unfriendly policy towards Ukraine. But the real question is, why did this come out right now? Perhaps the arrest couldn't be kept secret in this way, you know. Maybe Hungary's reaction was quite negative when they were informed through closed channels.
Budapest, for its part, did not remain silent. In Hungary, 2 Ukrainians were detained and urgently deported back to their homeland. In response, Kiev expelled 2 Hungarian diplomats. Such disinformation is only needed for psychological pressure and benefits Russia as it aims to pit Ukrainians and Hungarians against each other.
We live in the era of post-truth, when the fact itself has no importance at all. What matters is the interpretation. A video is taken, a real video, which is then interpreted in whatever way the manipulator needs. And essentially,
many people fell for it. Obviously, first and foremost, information needs to be verified. You need to use online tools to check videos, images, and the text itself, basically. To do some fact-checking so you don't fall for things like this.
It seems the Prime Minister of Hungary has decided to play along with the Kremlin. Orbán announced an unprecedented intelligence operation by Ukrainian special services against his country and reported that the Defense Council would be convened because of it. It's worth noting that the Ukrainian special services are not ignoring the situation. Special measures have been carried out in the border regions.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now. Sensational. Explosive news from Istanbul. Putin has disrupted the negotiations. Zakharova is at it again. Trump has made a surprising statement. And while the US leader is furious, Erdoğan and Zelensky have reached an agreement. Why could peace talks spell the end for Putin? All the latest details coming up.
Putin chickened out again and didn't come to Istanbul, sending a vague delegation in his place.
This whole game was conceived by Putin not to actually participate in any meaningful negotiations. Putin doesn't need that.
And Donald Trump wasn't even planning to go to Turkey.
I even said, why should he go if I'm not coming? I wasn't planning to go.
Meanwhile, Ukraine is only willing to discuss a 30-day ceasefire.
The obstacle to establishing peace is the lack of a clear will from Russia to do so.
How are events unfolding in Istanbul? Why did Putin skip the meeting again, and what is Trump up to? See further. March 15th, Turkey. A Russian Il-62M special flight squadron plane arrived at Istanbul airport. For the negotiations with Ukraine, Putin sent his cause envoys instead of coming himself.
Medinsky is supposed to symbolize that the current negotiations, so-called negotiations, are a direct continuation of the Istanbul talks of 2022, where Medinsky was the head of the delegation. In other words, he will not back down even a step from the demands put forward back then. So that's the message. And the fact that they didn't send not a single figure, even at the ministerial level. I mean, it's unclear how or with whom Marco Rubio could even meet if there isn't a single minister present. Well, yes, it's not even just disrespect, it's simply a demonstration that no one is genuinely interested in anything substantive.
Let us recall, however, the meeting in Istanbul was proposed by the Kremlin dictator himself after Ukraine last week called on Russia for a 30-day ceasefire starting from May 12th, which Putin refused to agree to.
Putin needs to create here the appearance that the negotiation process is ongoing, that it's possible, so that in turn Trump can keep saying, look, the negotiations are continuing. Yes, they're ongoing. What sanctions? We're having ongoing peace negotiations here. And against this backdrop, Putin would continue the war, but Ukraine wouldn't have active support from the US. That's essentially what Putin is aiming for. In other words, he needs to simulate negotiations, to simulate a peaceful end to the war, in order to weaken Ukraine and manipulate the whole topic of negotiations.
The Ukrainian side is represented in Turkey at the highest level, said the president of Ukraine, who also flew to Ankara to meet with Turkish President Erdoğan.
Our delegation is at the highest level. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, my office, the military, our intelligence agencies. Representatives of all intelligence services, by the way. But the level of the Russian delegation is not officially known to me yet. But from what we see, it looks more like a mock-up level.
And after these words, Russia lost its temper. Apparently, the truth hurts. Press Secretary Zakharova, in a fit of rage, quickly started defending her colleagues and slinging mud at Zelensky.
Who uses the word mock-up? Clown, loser, a person with completely unknown educational background, talking about people who not only have basic education, but also academic degrees, merits before the fatherland, who have proven their professionalism through their work, he calls them mock-ups? Who does he think he is?
And President Trump believes the Russian dictator Putin didn't come to the negotiations because he wasn't there.
I even said, why should he go if I'm not going? Because I wasn't planning to go. I would have gone, but I wasn't going to. And that's why I said, why should he go if I'm not going?
So he is constantly looking for some kind of excuse for Putin's actions, just to avoid admitting what's really happening in reality.
Earlier, Ukrainian officials stated that they would meet with the Russian team only to discuss how to implement and monitor the 30-day ceasefire proposed by the US presidential administration.
Well, actually, I think the game of Ukraine doesn't want negotiations will continue. And we can already see how Russia is starting an information war about this. In other words, they announced that supposedly negotiations, were scheduled for 10 in the morning, even though no one in Ukraine had heard of any talks at 10 o'clock. So now Russia will say, look, the talks at 10 in the morning didn't happen because of Ukraine's fault. So there will be a lot of corresponding information noise around this. But in reality, both the composition of the delegation and all the messages coming from the Russians show that they are not interested in any negotiations or ending the war.
Ukraine is ready for negotiations, while the Russian dictator has once again shown that he has no intention of ending this bloody war. So what is happening in Istanbul at this very moment? Let's figure it out together.
Hell in Crimea. The Ukrainian armed forces unleashed an explosive apocalypse on Russian bases, ammunition depots blown to pieces, equipment in flames, soldiers eliminated. But this is only the beginning. The Ukrainian armed forces did something in the east that shocked everyone. The Russians didn't even have time to cry out. From deep within Ukraine straight to the very heart of Russia, the security service of Ukraine carried out the operation of the century. You will be shocked when you see it. We will show the truth about what is happening at the front. Details, numbers, and footage. Right now.
A massive attack on Russian military facilities in occupied Crimea. Powerful explosions have been recorded in the village of Perevalnoye. An ammunition depot was hit, as well as facilities belonging to the 126th Separate Guards Coastal Defense Brigade and the 8th Separate Artillery Regiment. As a result of the attack, a fire broke out, accompanied by secondary detonations of ammunition. There is information about military personnel who were killed while on duty at the time of the explosion. The Ukrainian underground is recording direct hits on Russian military facilities in Crimea. Agents of Atesh have reported explosions in the area of Perevalnoye, including the aforementioned bases. Reports of casualties among Russian military personnel are also confirmed by other sources. At night, SBU drones attacked the Murom instrument-making plant in the Vladimir region, which produces explosives for the Russian Armed Forces, Navy and Aviation. As a result of the strike, at least 5 explosions occurred and at least 2 buildings were damaged. Meanwhile, the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade is demonstrating coordinated destruction. Aviation, FPV drones and assault brigades created hell for the Russians in the east. In this direction, the Ukrainian Armed Forces demonstrated exemplary synergy. Fighter pilots, drone operators and assault groups worked together as a single combat mechanism. It all began with a pinpoint airstrike by a MiG-29 on the location of Russian FPV drone operators. Ukrainian aircraft with surgical precision destroyed enemy equipment, positions and personnel. This first wave triggered a chain reaction. Next, dozens of FPV drones took to the sky, finishing off survivors and attacking enemy logistics. Tanks, self-propelled artillery, trucks, artillery, everything was burning. The ATGM exploded after a finishing hit, and the ammunition depot went up like a fireworks display. Strike after strike, the enemy was losing equipment, coordination and combat capability. The 3rd Assault Brigade was like a knife to the heart of the enemy's logistics. Ukrainian fighters methodically swept through the enemy's rear, destroying everything: equipment, convoys and manpower. Trucks, armored vehicles, supply vehicles and even a TOS that tried to retreat but didn't make it were all hit. A precise strike brought the operation to a close. Forests, fields, tree lines, the enemy didn't have time to escape. The real hunt continued even in hard-to-reach places. A self-propelled artillery unit burned up in a forest belt. One of the tanks couldn't withstand a direct hit. FPV drone operators demonstrated exceptional accuracy and professionalism. Russian troops were literally burned out, both physically and morally. What was considered the rear became a trap. Not a single evacuation attempt was successful. This operation is a model of modern warfare where air, ground, and drones work in perfect coordination. Unexpectedly, for the first time, the destruction of one of Russia's most powerful self-propelled units was documented. a self-propelled mortar designed to break through the most fortified positions vanished in a matter of seconds. This giant of military engineering capable of firing special munitions was destroyed by a precise airstrike. They barely had time to catch their breath and it was already gone. The pilots of the Rarog regiment proved that Ukrainian aviation means precision, cold calculation and inevitable punishment. Target detected, strike delivered. The result is perfect. Meanwhile, Russia is preparing a large-scale offensive despite international pressure. In all key sectors of the front, increased activity is being observed. Shelling is intensifying and there is regrouping and redeployment of troops. The main objectives of the enemy are to reach the administrative borders of Donetsk and Luhansk regions, create a buffer zone in the north and break through in the south all the way to the Dnipro. Fierce fighting is taking place near Pokrovsky, Chasovy Yar, Konstantinovka and Liptsi. In the south, the enemy is unsuccessfully trying to break through to the key logistics hubs of Zaporizhia and Kherson regions. According to Ukrainian analysts, Russia is preparing a coordinated operation on several fronts. In the summer, they may try to turn the situation in their favor. But the Ukrainian armed forces are strengthening their positions and holding back the onslaught. Despite talks of a possible ceasefire, the Russian army has been on a continuous offensive for months. Mass assaults, artillery shelling and new tactics, all of these are signs of a large-scale escalation that has already begun. That's all for today, and for other news, stay tuned to the broadcast